So let's get into UI and UX in web design. These are important concepts. UI stands for user interface, and UX is for user design. So UI, that user interface, that's the functional and aesthetic elements that by which people interact with a product. So in a website, those would be the font choices, the colors that are chosen, the buttons that they click. And UX is about the experience, the feeling that a user has with the product or service. So, in a website, how does this website make you feel? Is it the appropriate feeling? Do you feel like if you look at a really cluttered website, sometimes I feel anxious, like there's just so much going on and so much to look at, and it's just like overwhelming. Do you want that in a website that you create? Probably not. So, if you want people to feel relaxed, you have to create your website so that that is the feeling that they will experience. So, let's talk about UI and UX from a slightly different standpoint than web pages for a moment. We're going to talk about car. So, we have a Ferrari Roma here. So we could look at this from a UI and a UX standpoint. From a UI, that user interface, we could look at how it was designed. What are some of the things that they did for the passengers that will help them have a car that's good, cool? So I found an article in which some of the designers talked a little bit about the UI or the interface in which um, they had a particular lines that they were forming. They grooves in the surface so the lights look a certain way, and so they're designing it for these features of it, like the tail lights. But UX is all about the feeling, and so here I got a quote from somebody who drives the Ferrari Roma, and what he said I think kind of encapsulates what UX is supposed to be. So what's the big deal? The driving experience. Getting in it, starting it, and driving it are so unique from your common everyday car, it just brings a thrill. In our normal humdrum life where everything is cold and impersonal, it's nice to get something emotional, responsive, violent, and, dare I say it, decadent. It's my guilty pleasure that I don't feel guilty in owning. So UX is about that feeling that somebody has when they drive a Ferrari, whereas UI was about how it was designed. So there is this model, the UX honeycomb, that was created by Peter Morville. He's an information architect. He's worked for a lot of major tech companies, including Google, and he talked about unit design for using these terms, and that they all needed to be, you know, they all needed to be together like this. So whatever you're designing, it needs to be usable. So let's think about this from a web design standpoint. So the web page that you design, the website you design, needs to be simple, easy to use. It shouldn't be confusing. There shouldn't be much of a learning curve that somebody comes onto your website experiences. It should be useful. So your website should have some use to it. It's not a vanity project. Has a purpose. Maybe it's selling something. Maybe it's featuring your portfolio work, but there's a purpose behind it and it's useful for that. Desirable. So it's aesthetically pleasing. And please, yes, I hope we do. I hope we do really well with designing pleasing sites. Findable. So information needs to be findable, easy to navigate. So as we're designing the website, how are we going to put information on there? How are people going to find it? We don't want to make it confusing. We don't want to hide anything from them. They should be able to find what they need to find. Accessible. So the product or service should be designed so that even users with disabilities can have the same user experience as others. So we'll talk about this when it comes to using colors, for instance. So in web design, we want to use primarily two colors in a web design. We could add a third in there, but at least two. And we want to make one dark and one light so that whether or not somebody who's looking at our site is either colorblind or seeing impaired, light and dark is still very noticeable. So people can tell the difference between a light color and a dark color, even if they can't tell the difference between, say, green and red. So green and red kind of look the same, but if it's a dark green and a light red, or the other way around, a dark red and a light green, that they can tell the difference in, so it's still accessible for them. Credible, the company products need to be trustworthy. So if somebody looks at your website, do they feel like they can trust the company or your portfolio as being credible? So web designers really do have to take into account both UI, user interface, and UX, user design. So for UI, you're looking at typography, white space, color, contrast, readability, usability, illustration, icons, all those types of kind of practical, pragmatic elements. UX is a process. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. We'll have to do some research in UX, so understanding who's going to be using our site, what kind of journey they travel before they get to us. And so we'll start with some research and figure out who we're designing our website for. Then we do brainstorming and we use some flow diagrams. We create a wireframe, which we're going to be doing in this class. We're going to create a wireframe before we create the full website. And if you choose to, at the end of the class, you can take this into a website where you've bought a domain name and you have hosting service. That's great, but you don't have to in this class. This is a prototype. And then you implement, and once your website's created and launched, then we should always be analyzing and making adjustments to improve it based on how users are interacting with it now. In general, we can reverse engineer user design by taking a look at what elements are emphasized and if it actually works to evoke the desired feeling or experience. So if we're going to look at a website, we can kind of take a look at what this website is for, what's the business or what's the topic, and does it evoke kind of that feeling that we want it to evoke. We can also just look at the UI, taking a look at what colors are chosen, what buttons are there, does it make sense how it flows, things like that. I had asked everyone to send me a website that they loved and a website that they couldn't stand. And I used that for this next part of the lecture, in which I took one of the sites that somebody loves and took a look at what's going on with it and how it works. So let me just first of all click on this and let's take a look at the website. So Unity Dance Studios. And let's just do a quick scroll down. And I enjoy this website overall. Has a cohesive theme to it, has really attractive photography. They've done some really smart things with their user interface where right at the very top they have things for you little buttons for you to click on and to get stuff done. They have a good menu up here, very easy, and everything's unified here. So there's some really excellent elements about this website. I know why the student chose it because there's a lot of good things about it. All right, let's get back into the PowerPoint though. So from a UI perspective, as I mentioned, has a great menu, good buttons at the top, has a call to action, and actually has some really tightly written copy, which means it's very short and brief. So white space, not so great. I think I have a picture in a minute of the white space, and there's an unclear reason for font color change. So Studios is peach instead of dance. Okay, so here's my picture of it. So this is a white space here. That's not a lot of white space, and this is not functioning well as white space because it's busy. It's visually very interesting. It's just not much white space. So here, I'm not sure why Studios is in peach. uh, what does highlighting that word in a different color convey? So it's a choice they made, color choice they made, that 2 words in white, 1 word in peach. I would probably make dance the peach word because dance is what we want to highlight, not studio. Because am I going to be thinking differently about this place if it was called Unity Dance Group or Unity Dance School? Probably not. It's not. So the studio doesn't seem to be like an important word in my mind, and maybe I'm wrong, but it just doesn't seem like an important word, whereas dance or unity, those are important words in here. All right, so let's keep going. From that UX, user design, that feeling, I think this does an amazing job at creating a feeling when you're scrolling through the front page. So it really conveys that joy and fulfillment in dance when we have those individual dancers. Now, I do think there could be some improvement. So let's go back to it. So we start out here and we have this picture of people, and we don't get this joy of dance here. So I would probably put the 2 with people lower. I would start out with some of these as being the first things that we get, and I think that would improve our UX, is if we could really get these at the top as opposed to starting after the 3rd one. So that's just a little refinement that could be done. So also, there's some captions I would like to switch. And so let's see, I want to switch these captions. This says, is dance all they dream about? It's time. Okay, fine. Let's get to this one. Give your children the community they need to grow in. So this picture says nothing about children or community. So I don't think it works well. I think it's a great sentence. And dance a passion. Okay, so passion here, I can see that, but this has nothing again to do with children. But I have 2 here, which could conceivably be children. I would swap these 2. So give your children over here, is dance all they dream about down here. And I think that would help with our UX, that feeling just a little bit stronger. I mean, it's already good. It's already like, it's already like a minus, but we could make it an A plus. All right, then I love this photo in particular. They have it as the last one, and I kind of understand that it's their call to action, so take the leap. It is beautifully from so many ways. So we have good copy. So take the leap, she's leaping. I also love how they have this overlay, this opaque here, that she's leaping out of and into the clear. So very metaphorical here, which I think helps with our UX. That's very good for the feeling as well. So I absolutely love that one. So just some things that they could have fixed. So then we have Yahoo. I'm not going to pull up the actual Yahoo site. I have some pictures of it. But generally, Yahoo's very clunky. So I have a picture here of Yahoo with just a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, there's just way too much. We have an ad up at the top. It's like cluttered. I feel overwhelmed. I don't want to stay and sit with this site for very long. I really don't like it. But it's not even, so I'm kind of talking feelings there. So I went into talking UX, but let's just talk UI. There are a lot of pictures here, a lot of buttons. And it's hard to, so they say remove the topics you don't want to see in your newsfeed, but that's a clunky instruction. It's just hard to focus on anything because it's so much. And again, here, I don't know what to look at because there's just so many choices of things to look at that that interface is difficult to get past because they just put so much on here. So because of them putting so much on here, it makes me feel frustrated and impatient. And it also makes me feel really wary of them because they have ads mixed in with the content. So we have content, a story here, and we have a story here, and we have an ad here. And I don't like that because it kind of feels hidden. And then we have this one where we have a story, story, and this is an ad, and this is clickbait. You're going to have, you're going to click on this and you're going to have 81 individual slides that you have to go through, and you may or may not ever see a picture of Mindy Cohn today, because sometimes these clickbaits, they don't really care if they follow through on their headlines. They just want you to click, and they get money for each page that you click through, and so they don't always do what they say. But now these ones up here, these aren't clickbait, but I would be kind of scared to click on them because I feel like they're clickbait. They feel just like this one, so it keeps me from wanting to even use the site.